Chapter 23. Infidelity isn't really the absence of loyalty, Aarti thought. It is the need for physical intimacy when there's no love to be had. Take her, for instance. She had gone 7 years without having sex. 7 years. It wasn't because she didn't want it. It was because she could never get it. She made a decision to be with a man who couldn't give it. For years later, she would wonder why she stuck to a marriage for the sake of fidelity. Why did she stay when she craved human touch? When she desired to have an orgasm with a man rather than by pleasuring herself in the bathroom? Sure, she had perfected the art of touching herself, but that was only because she did not have any alternative. No alternative, damn it! And even though Amit had tried several times in the beginning to be a good lover every other way, he wasn't very good at it. All Aarti wanted was plain, normal, penetrative sex, which he was unable to do. And soon he stopped any form of lovemaking or even touching each other. She took a drag of a cigarette while sitting in her car in the basement and pondered her alternatives. She had felt such deep guilt at kissing Amitabh that day. Guilt that had made her body freeze. She could never look at another man again. Her flirtatious side came to a grinding halt. Her one more fling was the kiss she had. Amitabh truly thought that she loved him at the moment. But the love came later, when there was no alternative. It wasn't a bad love. They had a good life. But Amitabh couldn't give Aarti the one thing a woman needed: sex. And the guilt kept her in the marriage. She knew she had betrayed Dhruv. She felt that was a burden she had to live with. Yes, Amitabh had been dishonest, not telling her that he was important. She could have immediately got an annulment. But she chose to stay and help him. They did go to counselors, and he did take several pills for many months. But there was no improvement. He needed surgery, something he hadn't been willing to undergo. So she suffered. Alone. Through the nights and days. And when people spoke about romance and their explosive sex lives, she reached for a cigarette in the quiet solitude of her car park in the basement, where no one came to disturb her. 2 years into the marriage, Aarti got a Facebook request from Dhruv. He was married and wanted to make amends. She desperately wanted to leave the past behind. They met. Instead of having coffee, they checked into a hotel room, told each other they were forgiven, and had sex. That was the night Aarti conceived Aryan. As soon as Dhruv got off her, she knew they had made a baby. And Aarti wanted to keep it. She was ready to be a mother, and she knew she never would be with Amit. She got her husband drunk the next night at their favorite pub and went home. She pretended to make love to him, and the next morning when he awoke and saw both of them lying naked under the sheets, he realized he could do it while he was drunk. He tried alcohol several times after that to initiate sex, but it didn't end up well. In 6 weeks' time, Aarti told him she was pregnant, and the sex stopped anyway. He didn't bother after the birth of Aryan, and Aarti didn't push him. She also never told Dhruv. It wasn't his place to be a part of her life again. He had a wife and child of his own, and she couldn't wreck that home. So she kept her terrible secret. Another layer of guilt piled up. Because there was no alternative. Now that baby, Aryan, was 7 years old. She wondered how long she could hold on to the secret and her guilt. When would she be free of this burden? She looked around and realized that there were portions of the basement that were quite dark. It was only reserved for guest parking, and no one came down there. It was her place to smoke. The occasional cigarette that was really a bad habit. But in comparison to her life, it seemed as if it was not a vice at all. She decided that she couldn't continue like this anymore. She needed to give up this habit of smoking, as she needed to give up the pattern of feeling like there was no alternative. There was a reason she met Dhruv again at the wedding. It was a sign. She was a woman with needs. It was time she acted on what she wanted from her life instead of just living a lie. Dhruv had sent her a few messages about catching up again over coffee, but she needed to feel something more in her life. She didn't need him for a conversation. She knew exactly what she wanted him for. Aarti went upstairs to greet Aryan, who had just come back from school. Her in-laws had given him a glass of milk, and he was telling them about his day. He was overjoyed to see his mother. Aarti's mother-in-law said she wanted to go to her own house and lie down in bed. Aarti said she would take Aryan for his tennis practice after he finished his milk. She looked at Aryan as he spoke about his day at school. He had the same features as Dhruv, but his mannerisms were very like Amitabh's. The same excitement at discovering a new thing, the same way he winked at Aarti when he told a joke. Aarti smiled at Aryan. He was definitely Amitabh's son. If she hadn't had him through a lie, they would have gone for a donor sperm and IVF treatment to have children, one at least. Suddenly, Aarti felt like a rock had been lifted from her shoulders. Of course, that was it. Aarti assimilated the thought that had popped into her head. Amitabh never expected to have a child, but he married Aarti, and she gave him the greatest gift in the world, an heir, a son, a child that he could call his own. And if he knew he was impotent, he would have agreed to any terms and conditions for Aarti to get pregnant in any case. They would have gone for a donor sperm to have a child. But she didn't need to. She had redeemed him of any consequences of his actions. She had protected his impotency from the family. And she would carry his secret to her deathbed. She would never tell Aryan about his biological father. But she needed to tell Amitabh what she wanted. She was afraid it was not something that Amitabh would like. But there was one thing she needed to do before she took a final step. One more piece to fit in this entire jigsaw puzzle before she could be sure of her decision. She picked up the phone and dialed a number. She spoke softly. Hi, Dhruv. This is Aarti. Can we meet?